Our question tonight, how soon will the conflict be over, from what you've said, seems to be tied in very closely with the second coming of Christ. And what I'm wondering is that really the end of the conflict? Is that what you're saying this evening? Or aren't there some other very important events, such as the millennium, the destruction of the wicked, that are part of what we might call the conflict?
That's true. There are major events yet to come after. But the second coming really does mark the end of the essential conflict, because the conflict is not so much a great war in which the powers of heaven arrayed against the powers of earth, and God will eventually move in and bring it to an end. The essential conflict is in the minds of His children, of angels and of men. And the second coming means it's all over. The loyal are committed forever to loyalty, and the disloyal are committed forever to their rebellious rejection. So this is the conflict that really counts, and that has many significant implications. This is the important conflict that takes place in our minds. We've talked how the most essential thing is for God to demonstrate the truth about Himself, and some will object, well, that doesn't make us very important. No, if His demonstration does not lead some of us to conviction in our minds, He's failed. And so we're not just pawns. He's trying to win us. We're very much involved in this conflict. This conflict is being fought in the minds of His own children.
This takes us back to the very beginning, to our first conversation about the nature of the conflict, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Really, and that it's not a struggle of power and armies and D-Day.
He could have handled that in 1 minute.
But it is a struggle for trust, decisions, and that kind of thing.
So you see, again, we're not just spectators of the conflict. We're very much involved. Though the most important question is about Him.
You know, in your introduction here, you quote from 1 John, and here, so many years ago, the Apostle John writes, "Children, it is the last hour. We know that it is the last hour." Now, as you ask the question here, I have to ask it again. Was John wrong?
I like to trace that all the way through the Bible and note that all the Bible writers who deal with the subject describe the end as near. Remember Joel and all the rest of them, Jesus himself, the end is very near. One could look at the statement in Peter that with the Lord 1,000 years are as a day, and a day is 1,000 years. Then also John saw Antichrist there, and that led him to believe that the end was near. And then there are other ways in which it's near. John died soon after this. You know, he was in his 90s. And one night, perhaps when he went to bed, soon after writing this, he fell asleep. And John awakened the next morning, it would appear, from perhaps the most refreshing sleep he's ever had. And lo, it's the second coming. Now, he might have some questions, you know, but I doubt he'll have any complaints. And as far as witnessing all the great closing events, he will witness everything from there on. The millennium, the third coming, the recreation of the world. John won't miss any of that. All he'll miss is really the time of trouble.
I like the way you put that. He may have some questions, but no complaints.
I don't think he'll have any complaints.
Now,
Same way with saints now who fall asleep, as we discussed before,
yes,
before the Lord comes. They will arise in time. They'll even rise first.
John talks about Antichrist. Now, what is the Antichrist? What do we mean by that term?
Yeah, the word anti suggests opposition. And the opposition is expressed in many ways. The most destructive is not open opposition, but subtle misrepresentation. I mean, anyone who misrepresents Christ is an antichrist.
So it's not just one person in all the history of the world.
Been many, many antichrists. But John says in his day, now many antichrists have appeared. By the way, I think he was referring back to what Paul wrote in Thessalonians, that there's more to happen. Antichrist will appear. And John says, well, now he has. See, Antichrist has been working all these hundreds and thousands of years. I believe the end has always been very, very near. If the conditions could be met, God would have foreseen their being met, and everything would have ended much sooner.
In the second text in our Bible reference sheet, Jesus says that He doesn't know the time, nor the hour, the day nor the hour. That statement, of course, is made back in the Mount of Olives as he's talking to his disciples. That statement was true then. Is it still true? Does Jesus not know now?
Well, I would understand he's taken back all his kingly power, and he knows. But, well, the verse in Philippians, when he was here, he really emptied himself. And he lived as a human to show that humans, by the power of God, can lead good lives. And so he used no power that we cannot use. He often spoke and acted as a prophet. So I accept what he said then. He really didn't know at the time, but he does know now. I'm impressed, though, that it says the Father knows. Now, some wonder how much the Father can know about the future. If the conflict is in our minds, if the conflict is over trust, then the conflict is over moral choices.
What's happening in our minds?
What's happening in our minds. And Jesus says, the Father knows when the world will have made up its mind and will have made these moral choices. This is my basis for believing that God can foreknow our moral choices. Or how could he know the day or the hour when the conflict will be over? That's why I take that position.
Now, you've talked about the signs, and some of these signs that many of us here this evening have lived with and have thought about, but they do seem a bit far away at times. Didn't he also go on to talk about this generation?
That's right.
The generation that saw some of these signs wouldn't pass away? If you're right about the dates of these other signs, 1798 and 1833 and some of these other dates, was Jesus wrong about this generation?
I think I know about 12 different explanations of this generation, and they're all an attempt to extend it longer and longer. I remember when it was such good news to read in the paper that somebody living in Outer Mongolia on yogurt had made it to his 167th birthday. We say, oh good, the generation is still alive. I mean, that generation is long since gone. I'd have to put this with all the other similar places in the Bible. We could have completed the work back in those days. We could have done it. God has always held these things out before us. So I believe the generation that saw those signs that you mentioned should have seen the end.
Is it possible that there are still some more signs that we're waiting for or should be looking for? For example, now you didn't mention Daniel 12:4,
the famous one
that I've heard as far back as I can remember. Knowledge shall be increased, and men and women shall run to and fro.
Yeah, the beauty of that one is it can be updated all the time and kept current. It's very interesting to look at the pictures on the old signs of the times, since Dad edited that for so long. And you see the earlier covers of men running to and fro in antiquated Model Ts, and even before that, antiquated locomotives. But periodically, they had to send the word out to the art department, update this because people are now running a little faster to and fro, and knowledge is increasing. And you can see the evolution of the airplane and as well as the automobile. And then, of course, when the first rocket went up and Sputnik was going around, the word had to go out to the art department, update Daniel 12:4. Anything that can be updated all these hundreds of years isn't much use as a sign. If it's an indication that increase of knowledge and speed of transportation says the end is near. So I have to go back and read Daniel 12:4 in Daniel. It's the knowledge of the prophecies of the book of Daniel that will increase as a result of people urgently searching. The words in Daniel are the same as in Amos. There'll be a famine for the word. People will be running to and fro looking for it and will not find it. So in the context of Daniel 12, in the Hebrew, I believe this means that those prophecies in Daniel which were sealed up till the time of the end would in the time of the end be studied. And as a result, people will come to an understanding of the predictions in Daniel, and the great Second Advent movement will begin. And this is what happened. So I would date the fulfillment of Daniel 12:4, 1798, around the turn of the century. So this belongs with all those other signs at the same time.
But talking about fulfilled prophecies reminds me of a question that one of our listeners and who's been here wrote out very nicely for us. He says, what answer might I give my neighbor who believes that Israel will once again become a great nation? And there are many unfulfilled promises to Israel. He believes that these promises have yet to be fulfilled, and he bases his beliefs on Jeremiah 31, 35, and 36, Isaiah 2, 2-5, Romans 11 and so forth, Isaiah 31. And this friend of our friend who believes this does not accept these promises in the Old Testament as conditional and that they ended when Christ dies. He says God will keep his promises to Abraham. Now, here's someone who thinks that things that are happening to the country of Israel must be tied in with events that have to take place.
Well, what I like is his selection of verses. They're all excellent verses. But if one were to lay those side by side, all of them express some qualifications. For example, in Romans, Paul says, not all the physical descendants of Abraham are real Israelites, only the children of the promise. And Isaiah says that though the children be as the sand of the sea for multitude, only a remnant will be saved, because only a remnant will respond. And Jeremiah says, only those in whose hearts my law has been written will be my loyal children. Every one of those writers suggests that many of Abraham's physical children will not be among God's loyal people. But then Paul goes on to say, but those whose hearts are circumcised, they will be regarded as true Israelites. So I think if one were to take the passages listed there, one would have the answer. I would not look to what's happening in Israel today as an indication.
And you're saying they're not a group of prophecies or events that we're waiting for, that kind of thing?
No. God is looking at the people in Palestine today as he looks at all the other people in the world. If they trust him, all will be well.
You mentioned that the coming, in one sense, has been near for centuries.
Yeah.
Do you think this delay, is it all right to use that word, delay? It really seems like a delay. Do you think that's caught God by surprise?
Well, your comment makes me remember, my Lord delayeth his coming is thought to be a bad thing to say. Now, in the story, the Lord did delay his coming. What was bad was he began misbehaving as the Lord delayed his coming. The Lord has in mercy delayed his coming. But I see the Bible as foreseeing this many, many times, like Jesus' story of the 10 girls. The bridegroom tarried, the bridegroom delayed, and they all slept, even the saintly 5. They slept. And then you think of other places, the 4 winds being held that we discussed last time. They're held until an angel stands and says, there shall be no more delay. That Revelation 10:6 verse, I should have had it in the collection. There shall be no more delay. And then the whole chapter in 2 Peter 3 that explains the delay. And, well, maybe that's enough places. So the Bible very clearly prepares us for apparent delay, but don't misunderstand it.
And God hasn't been caught by surprise.
Not by surprise. He's even forewarned us of it.
You know, I was looking down through our Bible reference sheet. I wonder if some of you had the same problem that I did as I read along. For instance, in the 3rd paragraph there, I came across early Adventist believers, and there's a small a. And I guess I'm so used to seeing it with a large A. Was that a typographical error here? There's another place where the next paragraph, first line.
I think there's 2 of them.
What happened there?
No, I proofread that with care. That's deliberately little a, because there are many other Adventists besides Seventh-day Adventists. We've been rather possessive about that name. Every year my dad used to go to the Congress on Prophecy and sit with Adventists of many different denominations who believed in the second advent.
Now, how are you using the word Adventist there?
People who are anticipating the advent.
All right.
Yes, not a denomination, you see.
Now, you and I are both Adventists with the big A. That is,
That's
we
right.
belong to a church that wants to emphasize the return of Christ
Right.
by including that truth in its name. You grew up, as I did, with our dads talking about the end being near.
Yeah.
I can remember as a small boy reading that magazine that your father edited for so many years, so capably, Signs of the Times. And I just can't help but ask you this question. With all of that background, and it's a question I've asked myself too, do you still believe that the end is near? I guess I want to say, you know, do you really think Jesus is coming soon?
Well, I asked my father that. I heard him preach the nearness of the end for 55 years. He worked right up until he died. When I was a small boy, too, I used to go around England with my father, and I would sing and read the scripture, and he'd preach on the nearness of the end. He always preached on the nearness of the end. So just before he died, I asked him, do you still believe it after all these years? He said, had I seen and known all the things we've seen and learned these last few years, I would have preached it with much greater vigor. I don't know how he could have, if you remember how he used to preach.
I remember that.
No, Dad was absolutely convinced. There's more evidence now. But it is true that God is evidently waiting, as we could count on him to. That's even part of the good news. That's some of the most important evidence, his willingness to wait, though he's so eager to terminate things.
You know, I had the privilege of being your father's pastor.
That's
he was
right.
a member of my church
That's right.
for a couple of years up there in Mountain View, and I was always blessed by the vigorous conviction and confidence in the soon coming of Christ. And I came to the conclusion that your father and my father are looking for the return of someone they love deeply and trust most profoundly.
See, even my grandfather did the same. He died at 95, and he was this way too. So I've grown up hearing the nearness of the end all my life.
They're not just looking for something to happen, they're looking for someone they love to come.
Oh, very much so.
And I'm really blessed by that.
Well, you can tell Uncle Arthur, who wrote bedtime stories, obviously likes God.
Yes, that's right. Let me ask you this, though. Did you expect to be here in 1984?
Well, hardly. Well, we thought it was almost an expression of no faith to even suggest we would. Maybe 5 or 10 years down the line.
But 1984,
Well, here
when
we
we were
are.
young, didn't
That's right.
seem possible. What leads you to think of the end as near and the Lord's coming as being something soon?
I've often thought about that. One could go through the biblical description of the events to occur. Another way would be thinking of the larger great controversy view. You know that God, to be consistent with himself, his government, the way he handles things, the way he treats his family, the way he treats the opposition, the way he wants to make things so crystal clear, you know he would end in a certain way. So I'm looking for things to end that way, and they really are, I think. Well, like the gospel going to all the world. It's hard to measure that in some ways. There is another, though. The good news is based on the Bible. People have got to get hold of the Scriptures. Now, we don't print many Bibles ourselves. I don't know that we do it much at all. The Bible Societies doing a tremendous job. These Wycliffe people that go to the corners of the earth and risk their lives to translate the Bible, that's one of the most marvelous things going on. Never has the Bible been so readily available or so readable in the history of the whole planet, you know, as it is now. That has to be. The Bible has got to get out to the world.
And you're saying then that would help to heighten the sense.
That's right. The opportunity is increasing. Another one would be, God will not release the four winds, the final troublous events, until his people are settled. If I should see him apparently releasing, him ceasing to restrain, he won't do it until his friends are settled into the truth. Things going on in the world today make one wonder if maybe the four angels are beginning to release their hold. But then there's another thing. The people in the world have got to realize their freedom to ask questions, to make up their own minds. They cannot be dictated to as to the truth about God. And there's a great stirring and desire for freedom all over the world. Often people don't know how to handle it at first. But the sweep of the desire for freedom around the world is an important indication, also important that there's an attempt to stifle it in certain parts in the world. Freedom is the essence of this thing. People must recognize their right to weigh the evidence for themselves. But maybe most of all, the counterfeit. Satan's final effort to deceive will be brilliant counterfeit. I think seeing the counterfeit developing is
when
the
you
most
say, when
impressive
you speak
thing.
of counterfeit now, what do you see as the most serious threat or counterfeit?
Yeah, you see, I don't see it as open opposition, you know, black versus white. It's going to be something very, very close to the truth. And the Bible speaks of the gospel going to all the world, the Holy Spirit being poured out, people seeing wondrous things. And I think, and I would not want to indict any individual in this, but I think there is a vast counterfeit spiritual revival sweeping the world. There are many innocent people caught up in it, and they're looking for the truth. I mean, I wouldn't want to point at any one person. But the emphasis in this counterfeit revival is not on the truth. It's not on weighing the evidence in Scripture. It isn't even about God. It's all about ourselves. It's all about our feelings. And there's great emphasis in this religion on get in touch with your feelings. Get in touch with your feelings. The good news is get in touch with God. There's good news about God. We think about ourselves too much, and it can be depressing. But there's such an emphasis on feeling the power coming up through you. As I mentioned before, I notice it's often described as coming up through the feet, finally arriving at the head. The gospel is best apprehended the other way around. It should come through the head first. The truth is apprehended by the mind, a mind that is sanctified by the Spirit of truth. And there'll be great feeling. But to start out with feeling is very hazardous. Now, it is winsome. There's lots of love, and tears are shed, and there are miracles of healing and apparent conversion. It will be very close to the truth. But as a friend of ours once said, I am afraid of anything that would have a tendency to turn the mind away from the solid evidences of the truth, as revealed in God's Word. I am afraid of it. I am afraid of it. We must bring our minds within the bounds of reason, lest the enemy so come in as to set everything in a disorderly way. By the way, that's Ellen White. A magnificent statement.
Just to clarify, at the beginning of your comment there, you said that the conflict wasn't a matter of black and white. You weren't talking about a racial issue at all.
No,
you were talking about the confusion, the shades of understanding and deception.
Just as Satan will come as Christ, so the counterfeit will seem Christian.
What do you think is the greatest cause for delay? Are we contributing to this? You have spoken about God's patience and how the delay really makes God look good. But where might we fit into this?
Say even with relative innocence here. That is, we might be candidates for the kingdom, but not giving the message that must be heard. See, that's the special assignment that Adventists, little a, have been given.
Do you think that's the greatest cause?
I think the greatest cause is we're giving a beginning message all the time and not a finishing message. We're giving a narrower view, a somewhat self-centered view. We're leading people to be gratefully preoccupied with their own salvation. Gratefully preoccupied, and I add the word gratefully, for what God has done for me, and you too. Preoccupied with ourselves. The finishing message, the great announcement to the world that will prepare the world for the deception, is about God. We've got to talk about the larger view, the issues in the great controversy. We've got to help people understand the whole picture in Scripture. That's a finishing message. But meanwhile, we're even still using emergency measures to get people to be reverent and to behave. So long as we still have to depend on rules and regulations and authority and pomp and circumstance and all the rest to keep people reverent, we're keeping them as little children. Until we can turn people free, look, you're going to stand on your own someday, better start doing it now. We're not giving a finishing message.
What kind of circumstances or situation do you think will eventually move people to get ready to get this clarified? Do you think it'll take some fear-producing event, some world catastrophe or something like that?
Now that's often used, but fear is more the experience at the foot of Sinai. Fear gets one started. Fear is no way to finish. How the Lord will bring this about, I don't know. We talk of these things as acts of God and insurance policies sometimes. The thing is, when the opportunity comes, are we going to be ready to take advantage of it? When people want to hear the truth about God, the larger view, am I ready to help them find it?
What's the best way to prepare for this, to take advantage of these opportunities?
Well, I think understanding the importance of this larger, great controversy view, the truth about our God, and since that is to be found in all 66 books, there's nothing more practical, more concrete and essential than that we learn to read the Bible as a whole. And as a major activity of the church to which we're proud to belong, I can't think of a more important one than a tremendous revival of study of the entire Bible, all of it, every story. Don't just give them to the children. We need to take the Bible back and read it through and through and get this larger view, decide whether we like it or not. And if we're proud of it, it'll show through in the way we speak, not so much of ourselves, but of our God. Then when the opportunity comes, we'll be ready.
You know, our theme tonight, how soon will the conflict be over, takes me back to an event this week in which you led in our thinking at a funeral service. And I was impressed, Graham, with your assurance to all of us, the family, and to those of us who had come, with your conviction about the nearness. He is coming soon. I wish you'd comment just a bit more on that, review that for us. What do you mean when you say that? I remember you preaching up at Mountain View when I was pastor there. How near is near?
Yeah.
And this is a number of years later, and here's the same note.
I remember I used that title about 40 years ago up at Pacific Union College. How near is near? I think historically the great event of his coming is just around the corner, because what needs to be done could be done. And I think the increase of knowledge, which isn't Daniel 12:4, is occurring. Look at the technology now for communicating with the whole world. Incredible technology. The satellites. It may be possible to communicate with the whole world and give them this picture. On the other hand, the second coming is as near as our last moment of breath, you know. And that's why I think of it at funerals. When a loved one dies, especially if he or she has been ill and in pain, the next moment of consciousness, that person is face to face with the Lord at the second coming. And I love that Thessalonians passage which says, if someone dies before the Lord comes and they feel maybe they've missed something, no, Thessalonians says, they will arise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them to meet the Lord. So the main thing is, more important than knowing when the end comes, is to trust God. And if I should die tonight, I want to die his trusting child, because then I will arise his trusting child, and I'll have no complaints. We can all have lots of questions. We might even say, I kind of wanted to live through that. I think Paul did. Remember though, Paul said, I'm torn between staying with you to help you and my desire to depart and be with the Lord. He didn't believe in the immortality of the soul. He knew that as a Roman citizen, when his head was cut off with that sharp sword, the next instant of consciousness, he'd be face to face with the one he'd been preaching about with such pride. So he'll have no complaints. So the end is really very, very near, especially in a medical center like this, when we see folk come to the end of their lives all the time, sometimes very sad. We have good news for them. You fall asleep tonight, you'll wake up the next moment from a dreamless sleep face to face with the Lord. That's how near it is. Yeah. But I believe the big event is also near.
Tonight is number 19. We have just one more Friday evening in our series. I want to remind our people here in our congregation and at home and watching through video that we're offering this book, Can God Be Trusted?, which is a very nice review of our series, not a verbatim report of it, but a review which you wrote a number of years ago. We'd like to invite you to write for it. Just write to the University Church, Loma Linda, California. What's the zip again?
92354.
92354, and we'll be happy to send you a copy.
Good.